I never imagined my own brother would watch me suffer and tell me to stop overreacting while I was in excruciating pain. That day changed everything between us, and I still can't forget how helpless I felt. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Sarah Whitman, and my brother, Jace Whitman, was always the person I trusted the most. Growing up, we were inseparable. He was my protector, my friend, and the person I always turned to in emergencies. But one afternoon, everything I thought I knew about him came crashing down. I had been feeling a sharp pain in my stomach, so severe I could barely stand. I called Jace immediately, hoping he would help me. I expected him to grab the phone and call 911, or at least sit with me until someone arrived. Instead, he looked at me with annoyance and said, "Stop overreacting. You're fine. Just relax." At that moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own brother, someone I trusted with my life, was dismissing my pain like it was nothing. I felt betrayed, scared, and completely alone. Even though I was trembling and in agony, I realized I couldn't rely on him. I had to take action myself. Every step I took toward finding help that day reminded me how fragile trust can be and how cruel betrayal feels when it comes from the people closest to you. Growing up, Jace and I shared so many memories that still feel like yesterday. We built forts in the backyard, raced our bikes down the street, and stayed up late talking about our dreams. He was always the one I turned to when things got hard. If I had a problem at school or felt scared at night, I knew Jace would be there to comfort me. I remember the time I fell off my bike and scraped my knee badly. I was terrified and crying, but Jace held my hand, cleaned my wound, and promised it would be okay. He made me feel safe in a world that often seemed too big for me. I trusted him completely, believing he would always protect me, no matter what. Even during small disagreements with friends or challenges at home, I relied on him. His advice felt right, and his presence was reassuring. I shared my secrets with him, thinking they were safe, and I believed he would never let me down. But there were small moments that I didn't understand back then. Sometimes, he would shrug off my worries or make decisions without asking for my opinion. He could be impatient when I needed guidance or annoyed when I asked for help. At the time, I thought it was just part of growing up. I didn't notice the subtle ways he put himself first, how his comfort mattered more than mine. Looking back now, those little hints were warnings. I just didn't know it then. I only saw the protector, the brother I could lean on, and I didn't realize that even someone so close could sometimes fail you when it mattered the most. One quiet afternoon, I felt an intense, stabbing pain in my stomach. It came out of nowhere and made it impossible to sit or stand comfortably. I tried to ignore it at first, thinking it might pass, but the pain kept spreading, sharp and relentless. My chest tightened, and every breath felt heavy. Panicked, I called Jace. I expected him to rush to my side, to help me get medical attention, or at least stay with me until I felt a little safer. But when he answered, his voice was cold. "Sarah, stop making a big deal out of this," he said. "You're fine. Just breathe and relax." I couldn't understand why he wouldn't take me seriously. My stomach ached so badly that I could barely speak, yet he dismissed everything I felt as if it were nothing. I pleaded with him, explaining how sharp and unbearable the pain was, but he just sighed and told me to stop overreacting. He refused to call 911 or get help. Fear gripped me in a way I had never felt before. I felt completely alone, trapped in my own body, while the person I trusted most refused to believe I was in danger. Confusion swirled in my mind. Why was he treating me this way? Hurt burned in my chest, deeper than the physical pain, because betrayal from someone so close cuts sharper than any wound. In that moment, I realized I could not rely on Jace to protect me. The person I had always leaned on had abandoned me when I needed him the most. My heart pounded, and I felt a mix of anger and despair, knowing I had to face this crisis alone. The pain in my stomach grew stronger with every passing minute. It became a burning, twisting agony that made my vision blur and my hands shake. I could no longer ignore it or sit still. Each movement sent fresh waves of torment through my body. I called Jace again, my voice trembling. Jace, please, this isn't normal. Something is really wrong. You have to help me, I begged, hoping he would finally understand the danger I was in. But instead of concern, I was met with frustration. Sarah, seriously? Stop panicking. You're just making things worse, he snapped. His tone was sharp, almost angry, as if I were being unreasonable. My plea seemed to annoy him rather than alarm him. I tried to explain how intense the pain had become, how I could barely move without screaming, but he waved me off. You always overthink everything. Just sit down and calm yourself, he said, his voice cold and detached. I felt frozen, trapped in my own body while the person I had trusted above all seemed incapable of care. Helplessness washed over me, heavier than the physical agony I endured. Shock mingled with fear as I realized he was truly indifferent to my suffering. I couldn't comprehend it. I had relied on him in moments of fear and pain my entire life, and now he was turning away, letting me face something potentially dangerous alone. Every second that passed made my situation more terrifying, and my mind raced with disbelief. How could someone who called themselves family act this way when my life felt threatened? In that moment, I understood a painful truth: I could no longer count on Jace. I was utterly alone, and the realization hit harder than any pain in my body. I sank to the floor, gasping, realizing that waiting for Jace was pointless. No one was coming to help me, and every moment I hesitated made the pain worse. Anger flared inside me, burning hotter than the ache in my stomach. How could someone so close abandon me like this? I gritted my teeth and forced myself upright. Each step was agony, but I refused to stay trapped. My hands shook as I leaned against the wall, inching toward the door. Thoughts of betrayal swirled in my mind, mixing with a growing determination. I couldn't let his indifference decide my fate. I crawled toward my car, gripping the seat for support as waves of pain ripped through me. Every motion made me wince, but I kept going. The fear I felt was intense, yet beneath it, a spark of resolve ignited. If he wouldn't act, I would. I would not let him, or anyone, control whether I lived or suffered. Finally reaching the driver's seat, I fumbled for my keys, my body trembling from both pain and adrenaline. I could feel the weight of everything, the betrayal, the hurt, and the disbelief, pushing me forward. I promised myself I would get help, no matter how impossible it felt. As I started the car, my mind replayed Jace's words, his coldness echoing in my ears. But instead of breaking me, it fueled me. I would survive. I would make it through. And when I did, I would never forget how he had left me to face this alone. With the engine running and my heart pounding, I drove toward the nearest hospital, every bump and turn testing my strength. I knew this was the moment I chose to take control of my life, and nothing could stop me now. I stumbled through the hospital doors, clutching my stomach, every step sending sharp jolts of pain through me. The waiting area felt endless, the bright lights and cold floors only making me more aware of my weakness. I could barely speak, my voice trembling as I tried to explain what had happened. A nurse noticed me immediately and guided me to a private room. That's when Dr. Nolan Hayes entered. His calm presence was comforting, and his eyes held concern the moment he saw my condition. He asked clear, steady questions, and I could tell he understood the urgency without me having to exaggerate anything. "You're in serious distress," he said, his tone firm but kind. "We need to take immediate action to understand what's going on." As tests began, the tension in the room mounted. I lay on the hospital bed, terrified of what the results might reveal. My body ached, my heart raced, and the reality of how close I had come to real danger hit me. I had survived the journey here alone, but the fear of what could happen next weighed heavily. Dr. Hayes stayed by my side, explaining procedures and what he was looking for. I felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Relief because someone was finally treating me as seriously as the situation demanded. Anxiety because I still didn't know how serious it was. Every beep of the monitor and rustle of medical equipment amplified my fear. I thought about how different things could have been if Jace had acted when I first called him. Instead, I had to rely on strangers to save me. The betrayal I felt was sharp, but at that moment, my focus shifted to survival and hope. Dr. Hayes' calm voice reminded me that I was not alone anymore, and for the first time that day, I allowed myself to breathe. After running several tests, Dr. Hayes returned with a serious expression. He pulled up a chair beside me and explained carefully, "Sarah, your condition is critical. You have severe internal bleeding, and it could have become life-threatening within hours." My chest tightened as his words sank in. The gravity of the situation hit me fully. Every moment I had spent waiting for Jace, hoping he would care, now felt like a dangerous gamble. If I had hesitated even a little longer, I might not be here. He continued, "Immediate treatment is necessary. Without quick intervention, the outcome could have been fatal." I nodded weakly, barely able to process the reality. My body still throbbed with pain, but my mind raced faster, consumed by disbelief. Anger and shock mixed together as I thought about Jace. He had seen me struggling, heard my cries for help, and chose to ignore them. My hands clenched, trembling from a mix of fear and fury. How could someone I trusted so completely risk my life without a second thought? The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain. He could have killed me, I whispered to myself, my voice shaking. I could not understand how someone so close could watch me suffer and dismiss the danger I was in. Dr. Hayes explained the procedure that would save me, and I felt a surge of gratitude toward him, contrasting sharply with the bitter memory of Jace's indifference. In that moment, I realized the true difference between care and neglect, trust and betrayal. The room felt both heavy and alive, the seriousness of my condition pressing down on me, yet the thought of survival flickered in my mind. One person's apathy had almost ended me, but another's action was pulling me back from the edge. A few days later, I returned home, still weak but slowly regaining strength. The familiar walls of my house should have felt comforting, yet tension filled the air. Jace was lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone, acting as if nothing had happened. He glanced at me briefly and muttered, "So, you're back. Everything okay?" His voice was casual, careless, completely unaware of the storm inside me. I wanted to scream, to confront him about how close I had come to serious harm because of his neglect. But a strange calm settled over me. I realized that my reaction could be more powerful if I approached it strategically. My anger burned quietly, but it gave me focus. I began thinking about how to make him truly understand the consequences of his indifference without losing control myself. As I moved through the house, unpacking my things, I thought about the small ways I could turn the tables. I didn't want to hurt him physically, I wanted him to feel the weight of his actions and the reality of the danger he had created. The internal struggle was intense. Part of me wanted revenge immediately, to confront him with raw emotion. Another part reminded me to act wisely, to ensure justice without losing myself in anger. Morality and fairness wrestled with rage and betrayal inside me. By the time I settled into my room, I had a plan forming in my mind. It was subtle, calculated, and precise. Jace would see the consequences of his choices, and I would regain the power that had been stripped from me that day. I lay back on the bed, my body tired but my mind sharp. I knew that the next steps would test both patience and courage, and I was ready to face him on my terms. I began noticing the patterns I had ignored for years. Jace's careless behavior wasn't just that one day, it had appeared many times before. He often avoided responsibility, dismissed others' feelings, and acted as if his comfort mattered more than anyone else's. Quietly, I started documenting everything. I spoke with neighbors who had witnessed him ignoring emergencies or brushing off serious situations. I recalled family gatherings where his selfish choices caused tension or left someone in need unattended. Each story, each memory, became a piece of the puzzle. I also spoke with relatives who had experienced his indifference firsthand. They were hesitant at first, unsure if I should involve them, but as I explained the recent incident, they opened up. Each account confirmed what I had feared: Jace's disregard wasn't accidental, it was consistent and revealing. I wrote notes and kept a record of every example, organizing the events carefully. I didn't want to act out of anger or lash out blindly. Patience became my ally. I needed to make sure that when I finally confronted him, I could show undeniable proof, leaving no room for excuses or denial. As I collected evidence, the tension inside me grew. I thought about how he would react when faced with the truth. The plan formed quietly in my mind, like a slow burn, building until it was strong enough to demand attention. For the first time since the incident, I felt a sense of control. I wasn't a victim waiting for someone else to act. I was preparing a careful, thoughtful way to hold him accountable for years of neglect and selfishness. The coming confrontation would not be impulsive, it would be deliberate, and it would make him face the consequences he had ignored for too long. A week later, the family gathered for Sunday dinner. The room was lively with laughter and conversation, but I felt a tight knot in my chest. Jay sat across from me, smiling casually, unaware that the moment I had been preparing for had arrived. I waited until dessert, when everyone was settled and relaxed, then I spoke calmly, letting my voice carry clearly. "I need to share something important about Jace," I said, drawing everyone's attention. The room went quiet, all eyes turning toward me. I described the incident, how I had suffered severe pain and how Jace had refused to help me, putting my life at risk. I explained how I had been forced to get myself to the hospital alone. Then I shared the evidence I had collected, stories from neighbors and family, examples of times he had ignored or dismissed others' needs. Shock spread across the faces of my relatives. Some gasped, others looked angry and confused. I could feel the weight of their judgment, and I knew the impact of revealing the truth in front of them was powerful. Jace's face went pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He realized that denial was impossible now, that the people around him had seen and heard the full extent of his selfishness. His usual confidence faltered, replaced by embarrassment and shame. For the first time, he could not ignore the consequences of his actions. The indifference that had seemed harmless before now faced the scrutiny it deserved. Silence filled the room, heavy with disbelief and hurt, and I felt a quiet satisfaction. Justice was no longer waiting, it was happening right in front of him. I didn't raise my voice or demand apologies. Instead, I chose distance. I told my family I needed space and explained that I would no longer rely on Jace for anything important. From that moment on, I stepped away from shared responsibilities and made it clear I would handle my life on my own terms. Family plans began to change. When help was needed, no one automatically turned to Jace anymore. They asked him questions he couldn't avoid and expected answers he wasn't prepared to give. I stayed quiet and watched as he slowly realized what he had lost. Trust, once broken, doesn't return easily. He started feeling the weight of judgment without me saying a word. Conversations would stop when he entered a room. Relatives looked at him differently, no longer with admiration but with caution. Guilt followed him everywhere, showing in his lowered eyes and forced silence. I limited our contact to short, necessary exchanges. No late talks. No personal updates. No comfort. The bond he once took for granted was gone, replaced by a boundary he couldn't cross. That absence spoke louder than anger ever could. What satisfied me most was knowing I didn't need to punish him directly. Life did that on its own. He had to face the consequences of his choices daily, feeling the distance he created through neglect. I felt lighter as time passed. Setting limits wasn't cruel, it was protective. I reclaimed my peace without harming anyone, proving that accountability doesn't require revenge fueled by rage. Sometimes, the strongest response is self-respect. Watching him confront the reality of his actions gave me closure. I didn't break laws or cause chaos. I simply stepped back and let truth do the work. And that quiet justice was more powerful than I ever expected. As weeks passed, my body healed, and so did my spirit. I could move without pain, and I no longer felt the constant anxiety that had weighed on me. Recovery gave me time to think about who I was and what I truly deserved. I realized that my self-worth did not depend on anyone else, not even family. I had survived a situation that could have ended differently, and that survival reminded me of my strength. I started making choices that reflected my values, putting myself first in ways I had never done before. With clarity came confidence. I began reconnecting with relatives and friends who had always been supportive. These relationships grew stronger because they were built on care, respect, and trust, not convenience or obligation. I felt understood, valued, and safe around people who genuinely wanted the best for me. The betrayal I experienced with Jace became a lesson rather than a wound. I learned that not everyone will act responsibly or show love when it matters most, but that does not diminish my own worth. Instead of lingering in anger, I focused on what I could control: my choices, my environment, and the people I let into my life. Independence became empowering. I managed responsibilities, made decisions, and embraced opportunities without waiting for approval or assistance. Every step I took reinforced that I was capable, resilient, and deserving of respect. Looking back, I understood the truth: betrayal hurts, but it can also teach. Facing neglect and indifference forced me to grow stronger, to trust wisely, and to stand firmly for myself. Justice was not only about holding someone accountable, it was about reclaiming my own life and realizing my power to move forward with confidence. Looking back on everything that happened, I feel a strange mix of relief and sadness. The fear, the pain, and the betrayal were all real, but they taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. I almost lost myself trusting the wrong person, but now I know my limits and I won't repeat that mistake. The experience made me stronger, wiser, and more careful about who I let into my life. I understand that true care and responsibility are rare, and I've learned to recognize them when they appear. I also discovered how much inner strength I have, strength I didn't fully realize until I had no choice but to rely on it. Even though what happened with Jace was heartbreaking, it shaped me into a more independent and confident person. I built stronger connections with people who genuinely care, and those relationships remind me that support and trust are earned, not assumed. The betrayal I experienced no longer defines me; instead, it marks the moment I decided to stand up for myself. To anyone listening to my story, remember that difficult experiences can reveal your power and resilience. Life can teach harsh lessons, but growth comes from how we respond to them. If my story resonates with you, please support our channel by subscribing, leaving a like, and sharing it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Your encouragement helps us continue bringing stories like this to life. Though the memories are bittersweet, I feel calm and in control. The fear and pain have passed, and what remains is empowerment. I survived, I learned, and I reclaimed my life. That truth gives me peace, and I hope it inspires anyone facing betrayal to find their own strength. Do you think I did the right thing by stepping away from Jace, or should I have given him another chance? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories like this.